Juliana, good to see you. Welcome to Popternative.
Hello, I'm doing great. How are you guys?
I'm doing well. We're talking stunts. We're talking Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. I mean, before even kind of talking about that, I mean, like, was it a clear-cut path to stunt work, or was it kind of like stuff before that that led to stunt work? Like, what was that like for you?
Definitely not a clear-cut path. Stunts, and I mean, the film industry in general is anything but a clear-cut path. There
Yep.
is no, oh, this is the way to get to it, A, B, C. It's everybody comes from different walks of life and different paths and different backgrounds, but specifically stunt work. And for me, that was the martial arts. So I've been a
Yeah.
professional martial artist my whole life. I started training when I was 3. Both of my parents have karate schools, and I started competing at a young age. And being that I was competing for so long and I was a world champion, that kind of takes over your life, right? You've poured your entire heart, time, energy, money into this world. And then you get to adulthood and it's like, well, what do I do? This is
Yeah.
what I'm passionate about. And so there's typically, aside from stunt work, it's stunt work is like that, like, ooh, if you're lucky, you get into stunts. But it's almost like a fever dream, like, oh wow, that would be so crazy if it worked. But it's not a clear-cut path. So what I did was my husband and I had karate schools before we got into stunts, and the karate school martial arts business industry kind of brought us to Atlanta, which is a huge film hub. As we know, it's the
And
new.
show hub, Cobra Kai. Just saying. Yeah.
Yes. And so Atlanta was already popping, and all of our friends that we were kind of just training with were getting into stunts, and they were like, "Hey, you guys should do this." And so we were like, "Well, I mean, corporate is kind of nice. I mean, there's stability there, but it wasn't really fueling our heart and soul." And eventually the opportunities and the training kind of just kept coming around until we decided to take the jump.
Absolutely. And is there like, it's actually crazy because I've interviewed some stunt coordinators before, and I've never asked this. This is almost like an exclusive. And this might come off like not a stupid question, but this might come off like a yes. Like, you know how like when you audition as an actor, there's like there's an audition, right? Is it the same for stunts, or are you like hired? Like, I'm just curious about that.
So there are some auditions, but they are maybe we have an audition happen maybe once a year, if
Okay.
that.
So was it that crazy of a question? I was literally
No,
curious.
it's not a crazy question at all. So we have had auditions, but it's so rare. And everything really is networking and word of mouth.
Yeah.
So you train and you train and you train all these different type of skills, and you're kind of just ready to go, and you just express your wants and your goals, and somebody might be talking to somebody that's like, oh yeah, I know this girl is just trying to get into stunts, and they're like, oh wow, we're looking for a stunt woman for a non-union commercial.
Yeah.
And then they connect you, and then boom, you start non-union, you start building your resume, your set etiquette, and then on from there is like, wow, I heard that you were great, or I saw your stuff online. And that's how it happens.
Absolutely. And then we're of course, and then you are Jenna Ortega's stunt double in Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. You know what I mean? There's also that route, right?
That was a dream come true. I mean, I was raised, weren't we all just raised by Tim Burton and his crazy brain? Isn't that how we
100%.
all ended up like this?
Yeah, I need to know specifically what it was like, working with Jenna Ortega, and like, are there any conversations before she like you step in to double her? Like, do you like? Is there game plans? Like, what? Like, are you talking like to the stunt coordinators and you're talking to the stunt directors and everything? But like, what are those conversations like with Jenna specifically, if any?
Yeah, so I have the highest place in my heart and of respect for Jenna. She is one of the sweetest, most genuine, caring, kind, loving souls I've ever come across. She put a smile on everybody's face. She paid a compliment to everybody. She would go out of her way, even though there was like cops that were holding back like the crowds of fans. She would go out of her way and be like, no, it's okay. And she would go and take pictures with the kids, and she would go and make conversation with them. And so she was so sweet. We had a lot of fun little spurts and moments here and there. She also likes to journal a lot. So we would talk about that. We talked about what we were gearing up to do and what she was and wasn't comfortable with doing on the bike. So she rode the bike, but I did some of like the extra bike shots and also like the big crashes, the near misses with the cars. But she was tough. She would like, I mean, I got it. If you want to do it, like she was comfortable to let stunts take over, but as much as she's comfortable with doing, we'd love to get her face on camera. And so she was like, she was tough and gung-ho, just really sweet. She was great.
And then there's kind of a lot of like that, like process of like, you know, rehearsing the stunts and having those conversations. And then you actually finally go and like, it's shoot days, right? Like you're filming the stunts and everything. What was that like for you when you finally started doing the stunts for Beetlejuice Beetlejuice?
So obviously, or actually not obviously, I don't know if you knew, but Beetlejuice shot before and after the strike.
Yes.
And Beetlejuice also shot a good chunk of it in London. And then they came to the US to get, you know, the town of East Corinth, Vermont, which is where the genuine, like the real Beetlejuice house is. And then also in Boston, in Melrose, that's where we shot William's house or Jeremy's house and the bike scene. So we were rehearsing for 2-3 weeks before the strike.
Yeah.
And then they told us like, hey, the strike did go through. We are going on strike, but it starts tomorrow at midnight.
Yeah.
And so that was my first 20-hour day. We worked 20 hours in East Corinth, Vermont. Like it was crazy. And it was almost like we were taking, like when you're taking a test and it's like, all right, and pencils down. And we had to like get off because it was 11:58 and we had to be sent on transpo and be back at base camp signing out. And so like we were working, I was on the bike, and then she, like my stunt coordinator, Heidi Moneymaker, she is one of my greatest mentors. And she was like, all right, start getting off. So I slowed down, I stepped off the bike. And just as I was stepping off, the AD goes, all right, and anybody that sag off, like hands off. And so we were off 20-hour day. The next day we were flying back. We flew back. The strike ended at midnight in November. At 9 a.m., I was getting a phone call. I was on a boat in Miami, and I get a phone call, and they're like, hey, see you in Boston on Monday. And I was like, okay. So we took back off another week or two of rehearsals, and then it was finally shoot day. So we had a lot of gags, obviously, that we were rehearsing, but the majority of the time was getting dialed in with those cars, that garbage truck, because that garbage truck does not have great brakes. It's a big car. And so if I were to fall off the bike in front of that car, I had to tuck and roll out of the way just to make sure that the car didn't run over me and I wasn't a pancake. But we were super safe, and that's why it took so long to rehearse.
What is the official title? Stunt performer, stunt actor? Like, what is the official kind of title?
You know, I get asked that question often, and I think it's just a personal preference.
What's your preference then?
I don't really have one.
Oh my
really.
God, you have to have one because I have to see. I have to ask you a question that I need.
So it depends on what the job is.
Okay,
So
can I say stunt performer?
Yes.
Okay.
So stunt performer, stunt woman, stunt man, stunt actress, a stuntie.
What is a misconception about being a stunt performer? Like, what is something where everyone's like, oh, it's like this, eh, Juliana? You're like, no, it's actually the opposite of that.
That it's like super glamorous and easy.
People
Because
think it's glamorous?
so every once in a while, we do end up doing what is called an ND stunt spot. So
Yeah.
it's a nondescript stunt performer or nondescript stunt. And so we basically show up, and sometimes we're safetying around an actor, creating as a barrier between our background artists and the actors, the talent. And sometimes we get days where it's like, it's rather simple, but it's still something that you have to have some sort of athletic ability. Like, for example, for women, it'll be like running in heels. And every once in a while on those days, you'll run into other people in, background artists, other performers and whatnot. And they'll be like, well, I can do that. I want to do stunts. This is so easy. You get paid so much to do that. Wow, that's so fun. And we're technically talent, so we get treated well on set, but those aren't all the days. And those days make up for the days where there's not enough money to cover the injuries and what you went through on those tougher days. Yeah. So those days make up for those.
That's what you mean for the glamour. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, absolutely. No, because I just feel like a lot of stunt performers are on fire or like jumping through cannons and like getting on bike accidents and everything. You know what I mean? So I feel like just in my head, I'm like, it's not glamorous. Like sword fighting is cool, but it's not like it's sword fighting.
Yeah. And I think that sometimes another misconception is that we're invincible almost, or we're like actual superhumans. And so every once in a while, like I'll get to a job and this isn't like bad per se, but like there'll be a director that's like, well, can she jump from down there up to there and do a front flip on the way? And then the stunt coordinator will be like, okay, well, we'll have to start setting up, a wire rig to get her to do that. And then they'll be like, well, I don't know what you mean. She's a stunt. She can't do that. And it's like,
I don't know why that reminds me of. Do you remember the movie? There were like cheerleading movies of Kirsten Dunst, the Bring It On movies, and there was like all these little. Remember the scene where it's like the audition, and it's like stunt, tuck, back roll, like it just reminds me of that.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's like that. They'll just be like, well, can she just, do a backflip and then a front flip and then roll and then tuck and then land and then still be and hide her face the entire time with her hair because we can't see her face. And it's like, okay, so physics still exists.
Yes.
And there is still gravity. We can't shut that off. Mm-hmm. So there's also that misconception that we are actual real life superheroes. And even though we do really cool superhuman like stuff, we have help.
Last quick question. You have worked on Cobra Kai before, correct?
I have.
It's one of my favorite shows, so I gotta ask you about it. I've interviewed most of the cast. Can you confirm, because I've interviewed the actors, but I have not interviewed a lot of the stunt performers, but they shoot quick, right? Like it's quick, right? Like in regards to like the stunts and like the karate and everything?
Somewhat, but yeah. In comparison to most big TV and movies.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah. What's it like being on that? Because you have martial arts background, right? Like, is that just like Kid in a Candy Store, basically?
Oh, absolutely. Cobra Kai was a dream. And, the stunt coordinator and assistant stunt coordinator, fight coordinator, they are really careful about how and who they bring in because they want to keep a certain level of authenticity to the show. So, for example, for season 6, they over a year in advance kind of like came up with this idea because they know us from the martial arts world and pitched us to the writers with our martial arts documentary, and they wrote my husband and I in as characters, and it was one of the greatest honors that we've had. So we had stunt acting roles on there, and then on top of that, we were there for weeks, and it is run like a dojo. You bow in, you bow out of the mats. You do push-ups if you drop your weapon. You are coming up with choreography, not just for yourself, but for all these other pieces and parts and background fights and all this stuff that is happening. You are learning forms. You are really legitimately training. And it's such a cool thing, but it's not.
I'm probably going to get obliterated by the Cobra Kai fans now. What season were you on Cobra Kai?
Oh, it hasn't come out yet. That's
why I don't recognize.
Season 6, part 2. It comes out in November 15th, just a few away.
I'm so excited.
Yes. So my husband and I, you can see a sneak peek of us inside the dojo.
Okay, so I'm not crazy because I love the show, right? So I'm embarrassed right now. Like, who were you?
No, you have not seen me really come out yet. There's just maybe 2 seconds of me out on inside the dojo.
Okay, so you don't have to say anything, but you could just say nothing, but you're part of the tournament, 100%.
Sure.
Okay, you're like, yeah. Yes. I've been starting to see kind of sprinkles of like rumors of like who's going to show up for the tournament, and I can't wait. But
yes,
I love Cobra Kai so much. Like it's my favorite show. Like it really is.
There's just so much nostalgia and like the 80s cheese that you really can't get anywhere else. And it's like you feel like you're watching a Disney Channel show for adults. And so like the story and everything is like geared to our brains now, but you're watching it from a like kid standpoint. And it's such a beautiful place to be. And honestly, like working on it was a dream, just because as a martial artist and growing up with that Miyagi Doverse,
I feel so much better now that your episode didn't air, because I'm gonna like she's gonna think I'm a BS, right? Like I'm talking about Cobra Kai and I'm a big fan, and like I don't even know, because I like remember everything. Like
I believe you, because if not, I know people that are like, oh yeah, I saw you in this episode, and I was like, oh, did we?
See,
so at least you didn't try to BS your way through it. You were like, hey, I'm gonna be honest.
I passed the test, basically. And speaking of nostalgia, Beetlejuice, September 6th. They can check that out. Your stunts of Jenna Ortega and that. Juliana, so great chatting with you. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. This was so much fun, and I love your energy. I love your podcast. Thanks for what you do.
Of course. No, thank you for what you do. It's amazing. Your Instagram account is just your name, right? If people want to keep up to date with everything, there's really cool stuff on there. I love your account, by the way.
My Instagram is karate.jules. In case you were wondering what my passion is and what I live for.
Karate.
She's Karate Jules.
Remember the SpongeBob episode of Karate? Do you remember watching that? It's like the greatest thing of all time.
Absolutely.
Karate. The best thing ever.
That and The Office, when Dwight says, oh my gosh. Those are my favorite.
I wasn't ready. So good. Well, this has been Pop Turner, youtube.com/Pop Turner for previous episodes. Till next time, it's Juliana and PD Beats signing off.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.